Hello everyone, welcome back. So, the Raiden Shogun rerun is once again about to show up, and as always, the big question is, should you get yes? And not just that, we also have received word that Chevreuse is on the Raiden rerun. So we can probably assume, until proven otherwise, that unfortunately, I suppose for some of us, Chevy is hard locked on Raiden's banners. Along with Sarah for some reason. I know, ain't no heckin' way, but at the present moment that appears to be as it is. So there we are. We're here with A and we're here with A and Makukenki. When 4.8 dropped, all the bosses have 10-second respawn timers, so it occurred to me in the shower that, you know what? Moving forward, I'm going to start using world bosses as test dummies instead of Masanori. So, you know, we can have a bit more variation in our videos. Oh, and while we're talking about things, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the video if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Do you know that 95% of you haven't subscribed? Again, what's up with that? Hello, just hit it. It doesn't hurt you, and it gives me serotonin in the morning, so yay. Alright, since the last rerun of the almighty Narukami Gosho, God of Thunder, in 4.3, which was when Chevy was released, there hasn't really been any new characters that particularly want A. So characters like Navia, Arlecchino, Clorand, and Emily, they don't really need to use their ults, so the batterying part of A isn't really that important for them to be more or less fully functional. I don't think there's anyone who actually plays some sort of Raiden Inquisition team with Chiori, but I mean, look, she's an off-fielder, she's Geo. You can play A with Chiori if you want, but I don't think Chiori is that energy hungry as well. Garming could definitely use the energy coming from someone like A, but he's also way too busy being an on-fielder, so his teams tend to get a bit finicky if you try to somehow put A in there as well. I don't really think the rotations are going to work that well. Morlani, being one of the newer Natlan characters, doesn't have any energy issues in my experience. And Sethos is the interesting one because I have no idea. Sethos is able to use his energy without using his ult. His charge attacks use his energy. So Sethos players, however many you are, let me know in the comments if you've ever tried to run A and Sethos together, and is that necessary? I don't know. Let me know in the comments with that. That leaves mainly Chevy, Shigvin, and Kachina, I reckon. Hey guys, this is Kate the editor. I forgot to mention Shen Yun. Listen, Plunge A is definitely a way to play, but it's definitely not something that you should go out of your way to go and get A in order to play. Wow, that's a lot of words that rhyme. All of this to say, it's an option that continues to exist so long as you have Shen Yun. It is what it is. I'll talk about Chevy a little bit later in this video. Oh, and also, I guess if you know, you know, but Shilinen's also going to be of great benefit to A. But yeah, either way, with the characters that we do know everything about, I suppose with Shigvin, you could potentially use her mainly as like a Farina buff in the Taeza team, so there's that, and then you can swap out G for someone like Kaz or Shilinen if you want, if that tickles your fancy, so, you know, there's an option there. And then Kachina can, of course, use the new Scroll artifact set, so in any and all teams with A, if you're able to crystallize Electro in some meaningful capacity, Kachina can be an interesting choice, right? So there is at least that. I suppose any mono Electro team like the Raiden Inquisition could benefit from someone like Kachina at this particular moment in time, and then of course any team that you can think of using Kachina, you probably have also thought of a team that uses Shilinen, so there we go. All of this to say, at the end of the day, the Raiden Shogun is still an Archon that has a lot of really powerful legacy teams that are also really fun to play in no small part to A. So let's have a quick look at 4 teams in particular that I recommend because they are often quite a lot of fun and they are very strong. The first one is going to be Rational. So a lot of meta nerds out there tend to talk about national teams, and national teams by definition are just basically Shangling Babe teams, and there's often a few variants out there. Whilst this one is not necessarily, like on paper, the strongest, it is in my opinion the best because it is the one that is the easiest, well, to play. So let's just get Mago Kenki's like invulnerability phase activating. Alright, let's go. And in a team like this, we are relying on both Chevreuse and A in order to battery someone like Xiangling, because Xiangling, as you may know, is a famously energy hungry character to use. Now, of course, this is not strictly an overload team, so whilst this is not necessarily the best way of using Chevreuse, this is in fact one way of using Chevreuse. We do lose out on the Pyro and Electro Res Shred on this team, but we still get the attack buff that comes from Chevreuse, so part of our kit is still working here. And we do like having Chevreuse on this team as a Pyro healer who can also battery Xiangling, because we don't have any other options available at the present moment. Hopefully Mavuika or hell even Shillanen might be an interesting alternative for Chevreuse. We'll just have to see. In fact, when Shillanen drops, I will be having a look at Shillanen Rational. It does actually sound like a potentially really interesting way of playing Rational. The next team I want to remind everyone about is, of course, one of my most favorite teams, the Raiden Inquisition, named for being a team full of Inazumans. And it is one of my first really powerful teams. It's a lot of fun to play, especially if you're, you know, an Inazuman simp like myself. Especially because, you know, Inazumans tend to be the hottest women in the game. Plus Lisa. Like, you have alternatives, you don't have to use just the Inazumans. And, you know, if we didn't have to do a little bit of a delay, well, then we wouldn't have to worry too much about our damage. And, well, that's a lost ult there for Miko, but that's okay. This team is usually strong enough to clear Spiral at best, and I've been wondering over time, there have been some more characters from Inazuma that we could potentially look into as alternative Raiden Inquisition team compositions, including using Kurara, so potentially something like Miko Kurara, Sara A if you're feeling particularly bold. Otherwise, Shinobu is a healer, so we have an alternative to Kokomi there, so we could potentially play, let's say, Miko, Shinobu, Kaz A. There's an option right there. Of course, Chiori is also a character who exists, so I suppose you could potentially play like a sort of Taser Geo crystallized variant with someone like Chiori. So there we go. Unfortunately though, Miko stars don't count as Geo constructs, obviously, so you do lose out on part of Chiori's kit, I suppose, but that's just gonna have to be something you have to deal with if you want to bring Chiori into the team. Now let's have a look at a team that was made very popular with the introduction of one of the greatest Archons in the game, i.e. Furina. We're talking, of course, about Taiza. So Taiza teams are very strong, mainly because everyone in a Taiza team is in fact very strong. Furina being a very powerful Archon, plus Yelan being the next best, like, Hydro DPS character in the game. And with the power of C2 Gene, we're able to also get that attack speed in there, which makes the team feel so much better to play. And there's no need to bust our energy out now. Something like that. And yeah, having that C2 Gene is really good. If for whatever reason you don't have C2 Gene or Gene at all and you're in need of like an alternative option right here, whilst you will lose our VV, I can recommend Mika. He does make the team at least feel just as fun, if not slightly more fun to play, because he does tend to have more attack speed in his kit as opposed to what C2 Gene can provide. And finally, as a pièce de résistance, let's now talk about overload teams with Chevreuse. So, with Chevy on the Raiden banner, well, this team here, you can actually build if you go ham on the Raiden banner, I guess. If you manage to get at least one of everyone, you've pretty much got this team sorted out. Ignore the damage that I am doing on my Toma. He is not built for damage. In fact, dare I say he might not even be built point blank. But at this point, especially if you're playing Toma in an overload team, which is not recommended, but it is a thing that you can do. I'm gonna miss. Yep. Oh no, I didn't miss. We're using Toma mainly for the Pyro app as part of his shield. Chevreuse teams, i.e. overload teams, are famously very, very strong at taking out Hydro enemies in particular. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about enemies like the Tulpa in Spiral Abyss, Vivienne in the end, who have also shown up in Spiral Abyss. I'm also talking about things like the Hydro Cube, which has seen action in Spiral Abyss, as well as the Mimics that have seen action in Spiral Abyss, and of course big Hydro slimes that sometimes show up in lower levels of Spiral Abyss, but they also exist as well. And the reason why is because when you're going up against those enemies, you're essentially playing over Vape, which is what we were doing with Xiangling in the Rational team a little bit earlier. And so because of that, we're still triggering Overload, which means we are able to do something that Kazuha cannot do against those enemies, which is we're able to actually provide some Electro and Pyro Red Shred as part of Chevreuse's kit. So that's really, really good, right? And then on top of that, if you happen to have C6 Chevreuse, then you also get that extra damage percent as well, and you also get the attack buffs. So that's really, really good. This is why overload teams, specifically with Chevreuse, are now particularly strong against that, because it means that your Pyro character, if you're not using Toma and instead you're using Xiangling, for example, gets to do a lot of damage, because Xiangling can do a lot of damage. That's just how she is. But also on top of that, these overload teams are actually not that bad against enemies with Geoshields, and we're starting to get quite a few of those as well. In particular, the Vivaldi Centaur from Lemuria, as well as the local legend that has a great big Geoshield that you have to fight against in the current Spiral Abyss. Keep in mind, Geo damage tends to be better at cracking those Geoshields compared to Overload damage, but Overload is kind of the next best thing. And Claymores, of course. I also want to point out that there is a new enemy in Natlan that is worth checking out with Electro damage and Pyro damage, i.e. Overload hits, and that is He Never Dies. Except he seems to get stun locked by Overload damage. I'm pretty sure, actually, I'm fairly certain that you can actually use the Overload reaction as part of the methods to actually stun lock the Capybara, to prevent it from charging up the great big charge attack, which is basically part of the mechanic of fighting him. He Never Dies is actually not terribly difficult to kill. You just have to be able to knock it out of the charging mechanic, and whilst you can use things like Claymores, Overload damage seems to also do the trick. A herself seems to also be able to stun lock and juggle He Never Dies, so check out this background footage, because clearly the concept works. I do want to address one other thing as well, and this is something I've started to see pop up on the subreddit, and it's a perfectly valid question to ask. It's the comparison between A and Clorand. Because there's been quite a few people who are like, oh, should I get the Rated Shogun or should I wait for the Clorand rerun? Here's the deal. Clorand is much more fun to play than A. Straight up. Clorand is, without a doubt, the most fun character to play in the game right now. Still, I know some people reckon Morlani is more fun to play, and that's your opinion. The fact is that Clorand is more fun to play even than Morlani. So, there's that. But A her main strength over someone like Cloran is that she tends to be better when it comes to, I guess, overall team DPS. And what do I mean by that? A's teams, apparently, according to the Excel spreadsheet players, tend to have about as much, or if not slightly more, team DPS than their exact variants with Clorand. On top of that, A, being the universal battery, is able to make all of those teams hella easy to play because she's able to just charge up everyone's ult. So that's really, really good. For example, I love playing Clorand Chaos. I really, really enjoy this team, and yeah, it pops off. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of VFX on the screen at any point in time. It is a wonderful team to play. But there have been moments where Baiju and Farina's ults aren't charged up on time, and that's a little bit odd, and that's a little bit annoying. If I were to play Shogun Chaos instead, oh yeah, their ults would be up and ready always. Like, no doubt, they would get their ults back really, really easily. So I think at the end of the day, when it comes to asking whether or not you want to get A or whether or not you want to save for Clorand, the answer is, can you afford Shillanen? But no, if you are struggling to clear Spiral Abyss right now, I would probably recommend A over Clorand, because I highly recommend A in the general sense. But if you are already fine with clearing Spiral Abyss for any and all reasons, and you're looking for someone who's very, very enjoyable, you can go for A. She's really, really fun to play. But if you want my recommendation in that specific context, I highly recommend Clorand. The answer to the question, should I get A now that Clorand exists, is, was, and always will be, yes. Alright, so, has anything changed when it comes to A's builds? Nope. 99.99% of us are running EOSF on A. That's it. Typically with an ER Electro Crit build. That being said, attack sands and attack cups can be viable, so test against test against your test dummy of choice. Keep in mind, like I may have mentioned a little bit earlier in the teams video, if your team is full of damage percent, for example, Aza, then I do find attack cups to be a bit better than electro cups, at least in my experience. So as always, test against your test dummy of choice. There's it pains me to bring this up, but okay. There's a few of us who dare mistreat our beloved god of mummies by playing EM Raiden, which continues to be a playstyle and a build that I wholly reject as heresy of the highest order. Heretics build Paradise Lost with full EM. When it comes to A's weapons, look, here's the deal. Any and all DPS spears that isn't specifically the Scythe or Lumideus, even though you can use them as stat sticks, but let's just single out the Scythe and Lumideus. Apart from those two, any and all DPS spears can probably be used by A in some meaningful capacity. So if you have a 5-star DPS spear of some description that isn't those two, I guess, then, you know, don't fret. On top of that, the Catch, being a free-to-play 4-star, has always been a very, very strong weapon on her. So if you don't have it, go fish. That being said, it's also a very strong weapon on the Archon of Polearms. So if for whatever reason you want to go for C0R1 and you're looking for an excuse, then look, here's my excuse, as opposed to the general consensus of going C3R1. I'll talk about constellations in a sec. If you want to put the Catch on Orpa, and then you go and get Engulfing for A, that's exactly what I did, and I don't have any regrets doing it. So there we go. Yeah, that's why I have Engulfing without any constellations. Heretics use Dragon's Bane. When it comes to A's constellations, okay, here's the thing. Chevy's on her banner, so because of that, I'm gonna go for A's constellations. I know, feels whaley, shut up. So because I'm gonna go for A's constellations, let's talk about them in a little bit more detail. Let's start off with C1, because I'm probably gonna end up with C1. Oh dear. Okay, look, it's possible, I don't know, it's possible that aggro over 8 teams will potentially make use of her C1, especially if you have Nahida, because Nahida's ult is a 40 cost ult. So at that point, the idea of C1 is that you can get faster, stacks, resolve stacks with her C1. In most teams, that's not going to be all that useful because you tend to pop everyone's ult and you already have max resolve stacks anyway. But in teams where you have characters that do have low cost ults like Nahida, or if you are in, let's say, Chevy teams where you don't want to use the highest ult because, let's say, you want the fastest rotations on the planet and the higher isn't built for damage, she's built for tanking, then C1 might actually be useful in that regard. I don't know. Look, I don't know. I'll find out soon enough. C2, traditionally, everyone knows this, it's a gigantic damage increase. This is well documented. Let's just say, I think on builds where your A is already doing 300k damage on the initial slash without constellations, C2 should make your initial slash hit 500? 600 damage? 600k damage? More? Possibly? I don't know. It's a big increase. That's the main idea, alright? C3 is just basically C2 plus. C5, on the other hand, is nothing. It's whatever. C4 is... it's an odd one. I really do think that C4 is designed specifically for Rational, and that's about it. I don't know if any other team would like the additional attack bonus after the first rotation. So there we go. And then C6, honestly, in my opinion, it feels unnecessary. It's basically cooldown reduction. And it's even more hilarious knowing that C2 Shilin at the present moment is also cooldown reduction if you have to play any teams with Electro. So, yeah, that's not a constellation I would ever recommend. Even for Raiden mains, I don't think C6 is really that worth it at all. So, in conclusion, the almighty Narukami Ogosho, God of Thunder, is very, very good. And so should you get her? I highly recommend her. I've always highly recommended her, and I don't think that has really changed. Clorinde, as I mentioned, is a very, very solid alternative because she's a lot of fun. But I think, tends to do just a bit more damage, and of course her teams are just the easiest teams to play because you don't have to worry, really, about getting your ult back without making, I don't know, Xiangling builds that have 3000 ER. You can just rely on A to battery Xiangling so that all you need is 200 ER, not 3000. Let me know if you've got all of this in the comments below. Are you going for the Raiden Shogun or are you going for Chevy Constellations? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Not even have the courage to be afraid. Hold the line. Glory to the Shogun! I'm always watching. Emerge right now. Now that's lock the field. Gaining the upper hand. Torn to oblivion. With the fall of darkness, destruction shall rise. Have a taste of your purgatory. Nothing lasts forever. Emerge. Inazuma shines eternal. You've proven to be a worthy opponent after all. Right now, emerge. My blade is